This episode of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast has been brought to you by our sponsors at Sweet Cheetah Publicity. Sweet Cheetah is a PR collective that values people over profit. They put a different spin on public relations by working primarily with friends and using all profits to aid charitable organizations. With a roster that includes Jawbox, The New Amsterdams, Brainiac, Get Some, Funeral Date, Damian Dunn, and many more artists, record labels, and podcasts. Sweet Cheetah. That's a great PR cohort. You can find them on social media by simply searching Sweet Cheetah PR, and they'll be there. He's been Tim. I've been Peter, and Sweet Cheetah has been beautiful. Right off the bat, when we go through your social media, it is just wall-to-wall photographs of bands from hardcore and metal, done in such a way that it's very reminiscent of analog. Are you shooting in analog, or is this all digital photography?
I started using a digital camera, honestly, just because that's what I need to be available. Like, I had started going to shows kind of like anybody does usually when you're a teenager. So I started going when I was like 13. I had been to a handful of shows as a kid just because of like being taken by my uncle, stuff like that. But like, I mean, like going with friends or like going by myself. And it was one of those things where I saw photographers and it was just like, hey, like I could probably try my hand at that.
Yeah.
And so my 17th birthday came up. It was the morning of my birthday, and my mom was like, look, things have been crazy lately. What's one thing you'd want for your birthday? We'll go out and get it right now. And so I just, you shoot your shot. It's like,
Yeah,
I'd kind of like a camera. I mean, if I'm not, asking for like a $3,000 camera, I totally understand it has to be within limits, but like, is that possible? So I got my first digital camera, and I found the email for Cynic's PR person at the time, and I was going to go see them in about a month. I don't think I'd even used the camera once yet, but I sent the email. Now, I was blunt. I was totally blunt. I said, look, I'm just a kid with a camera, not expecting special treatment. I'm buying my own ticket. If you guys like the photos and decide to use them, I would love it. If you hate every photo, I totally understand.
Mm-hmm.
But hear me out, and I appreciate the opportunity if it's possible. And they granted it to me 2 days later. They're like, yeah, the pass will be at the box office. Just do your thing.
Wow. And so you took your shot. This isn't like a local band. This is Cynic. This is a very known, very celebrated death metal band.
Exactly.
So you started like you skipped the farm team and went right into at least AAA ball at that point.
Oh yeah. No, I was not like, trying to inch my way in.
Right.
I was going to be in where I wanted to be, and I was going to pick exactly what I was shooting, or I was not going to do it.
That's very reminiscent of like, my origin story with doing fanzines.
Yeah.
I just started, but there was no email back in those days. It was letter writing.
Yeah.
But same kind of thing. Just I was going right for the top of the heap type artists, and I got most of them.
Well, I think, there's an honor in that honesty. Like I said, I told the PR person straight up, it's like, look, I'm not acting like I'm anybody important. These photos are literally going nowhere if you guys choose to not use them.
Yeah.
It makes a story for me. That's it.
That's amazing, though.
So that's almost 15 years ago this April.
Oh, my God. And how old were you then?
I was 17. I was a senior in high school.
Wow. That's amazing. What was the first band though that made you want to like start doing this? Like the first show, what was that like? Who were the bands? What was the atmosphere?
I'm honestly trying to remember. I think I just loved being at shows. I mean, when I couldn't even go to shows, I was promoting shows. I was doing my first bit of like street team work when I was 11.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we're talking like before any social media was really a big deal. Like, yes, the internet was involved, but it was very, like, dare I say, primitive.
Well, it was probably AIM at the time.
Yeah. So I'm, you know, signing on to these websites that are, you know, practically considered fossil
Mm-hmm.
level at this point, that you tell people and like either their eyes light up and they're like, oh, I totally remember that. Or people are like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
When I explain how the internet used to be to younger people, this generation, they always say invariably, "Oh, like the dark web." Yeah, dude, like the dark web, because the internet used to be just like the dark web is now. You,
Everybody knew coding. It was just a zoo.
yeah, like remember there was stuff on the internet back then that was absolutely just, yeah, I can't believe it. Like Dan's Gallery of the Grotesque or deathvac.com. Like there was some sick stuff out there being consumed openly.
It was the Wild West.
It was some outlaw shit back in the day. It really was. But you know, it was fun. There was something about it that it felt dangerous, and I dug it. It's how I really got deeply into noise music and power electronics, death industrial.
Absolutely.
I'd already been into it via like some of the core groups like White House
Sure.
and things like that. I started like going down those rabbit holes when I started looking at the True Death websites and stuff like that. They kind of
Yeah.
like went hand in hand, but that's neither here nor there. It's just a fun memory. But back to your story, there's a stark contrast that you're playing with at all times here, with in terms of the images themselves. It's never just like for as many great photographers of bands like BJ Pappas, who was like
Yeah.
the photographer of New York hardcore at large. Um,
Absolutely.
BJ wasn't his legendary, incredible, great action shots, but for every BJ Pappas, there's a million, you know, kind of just pedestrian photographers. But what I find kind of captivating about your work is it's black and white predominantly. Am I correct in assuming
Yeah.
that? It seems like it's mostly black and white, and there's such a stark contrast to the images themselves. Very bitey, very, like I said, analog reminiscent. Um, was that something you stumbled into just by accident or via necessity?
I'd say it's accident, or even, you know, to kind of show my art school hand. It's like the Cartier-Bresson, the decisive moment sort
Mhm.
of thing. Um, I I'm completely self-taught with a camera. It's all shooting from the hip, but I took the opportunity to try to get some sort of extracurricular education. I have gone to art school, but before I did that, I went into like a less formal sort of residency,
Mhm.
if you will, for 3 months that I did in Nuremberg.
Wo In Nuremberg.
Yeah,
How walk me through that.
I'll give you some context.
Okay.
So, okay, I mean, I think the more people get to know me, rather than just knowing, you know, I'm one of many people into this alternative music, however you want to word it. Um, I'm I don't mean to act like, you know, oh, I'm a snowflake because we're all so special, but I am a bit of an anomaly at times. Um, I grew up in a relatively small town that's in Los Angeles. So like I categorically say I'm from LA for to give people context, to not take them down the rabbit hole.
Mhm.
But if they're from the area, I explain I'm from the end of the freeway. I'm from the small port town that nobody goes to, or that like people go to because they're going on a cruise,
Mhm.
or because they're going to the fish market. That's all you go here for. There is not much to do here when you grow up. So either you fall in line and you go to either the private school or the public school that everybody knows. You play football, you get married, you become a longshoreman, and your body's broken by 50, but hey, you got a pension or a retirement fund, and you got your SUV out in front, you're set. I was into martial arts.
Me too.
I hated hot weather.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like hanging out at the beach. I liked ice hockey. And I liked metal music. And that all did not meet the bill from the moment out the gate. So it was pretty clear that I needed to get out.
Yeah.
And that was goal number 1 from like 7 years old. So I did what I could. I'll skip over some things for brevity's sake, but I joined a nonprofit when I was 19. And that's partly how I got this opportunity for this sort of artist residency thing. I was in like my 5th or 6th year working in this nonprofit. I'd worked in various parts of the world. I worked in Norway for a short time. I had been to Thailand, Japan, and there was all these different work projects that I was doing. But I had met some artists along the way during a stopover a time when I was in Germany. Town called Herrnhut. It's like 30 minutes away from Czech Republic. And so they announced they were doing this residency thing in Nuremberg. And I was contemplating leaving the nonprofit at the time, but this seemed like an exciting opportunity. And I'd already shot shows for, I think, 5 years at that point, maybe a little longer, but I'd never had any schooling. And I knew everybody that was running the school. So I just figured, let's take a chance. And they wanted me to have a film camera. I'd never picked up a film camera other than a disposable camera. So, I got the cheapest thing I could find because that was all I could afford. I found an old like Pentax camera for like $70 or something, I think on eBay, not even knowing if it would work. And I flew to Nuremberg with it in my bag, not having used it once. And I just kind of fell in love with it. It like aesthetically and the image making of it all made sense to me. Yeah. The slowing down of film, the needing to have intent involved in every single photo you take, not just because you want to be decisive in how you want something to look. It's going to cost you money.
Yeah.
The moment you hit that button, that's cash out your pocket. So you better make it count. You better hope that focus is dialed in. You better hope your thumb didn't rub on the lens right before you hit the trigger. You have to mean what you are making in that moment. Yeah, it is not, the smartphone days where you're just tapping away, holding the button. You got 700 photos taken for you. It's going to count for something.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line with something like that. With especially if you're not, developing on your own.
Yeah.
And you don't have a dark room at your disposal. Like you're paying a lot of money for that.
Well, and sometimes having a dark room at your disposal is even worse if you're a beginner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Trying to get that stuff open in the dark, trying to make sure you got the chemicals sorted. It's a murder scene.
I know. And, having grown up in an era when shop class, part of that was we learned how to run a dark room and how to develop film and how to print photos. I mean, that was just when I was in high school, that was something you did. That was a part of it. Yeah. That went away, I think, in the school district I'd attended in the mid 90s. So I was one of the last gasps of that. But to me, there's something about that whole, I guess you could call it a ritual.
Oh, definitely.
Of developing your own film and printing your own photos. But I can't imagine the culture shock of going from this small town in LA to, the home of the Nazi trials.
Yeah. I was minutes away from a stadium that used to have like regular Hitler meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably, I think they said like 10 minutes away by walk.
Now, culturally, how did you find the city? Like walking
Um,
up to it, you know?
Mind you, I'm talking about the fall of 2016. So
Yeah.
this was a really bizarre time to be there, you know. Not to name the thing that should not be named, but I think you know who I'm referencing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you know, he's been spewing his campaign, and I think pretty much anybody that had been observing the mess that is our political system kind of knew he might be exactly what we deserved and what we were getting, but didn't want to admit it either.
Yeah.
And I remember this defining moment. So, as I said, I had been in Nuremberg, but we were all supposed to take this brief trip to Paris for a photo conference. And along the way, because I'm me, I found out that Neurosis was playing in London a few days before then. So what did I prioritize?
Oh, Neurosis.
Exactly.
My all-time favorite
So
band. Of course you would.
I bought a €10 Ryanair ticket from Nuremberg to London because I love cheap flights in Europe. I miss that terribly.
Mm-hmm.
So I take this €10 flight to Gatwick Airport. I get there in the middle of the night. Customs is looking at me like I'm this stark raving maniac because I'm only going to be in London for like a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's solely to shoot a show for no money at all. And he just does not believe me at all. He's like, you're just, you got criminal written all over your face. This is just not flying. I'm like on the edge of missing the one bus ticket that I have to get into London. I'm supposed to be at this hostel that I don't know if I'm going to get let into. It's just a train wreck from the beginning, but I eventually get let through. Luckily, the bus ticket was kind of forgiving because it was the middle of the night. They weren't that like stringent on checking stuff. So I got to London in the middle of nowhere, walked to my hostel in the rain. And luckily, I had enough foresight to email ahead of time that I was going to be late. And the night manager was kind enough to be waiting for me.
Oh wow, that's cool.
But we get there, we sort this all out, and it's 2 days later. I've shot this amazing show of Neurosis and Earth at this beautiful old theater in Camden. I wake up and I'm in Paris, and I'm like just delirious. I look at my phone. First thing I see is that Leonard Cohen had died.
Ugh.
The second thing I see is that Trump is the president.
Oh my
It's like,
God.
can I go back to bed? I want a do-over. This is not how I want to wake up.
Oh my God. I don't know if I would have come home after that.
This doesn't work.
there are certain definitive moments in every human being's life. I know I can count at least a dozen where I knew that my world was never going to be the same again. Sadly, we share that moment. Obviously, I was not abroad during that time period, but most certainly, I woke up that morning and he was president, and I knew that things were going to be a lot worse. And I was right.
Yeah.
So you've been making like maybe not a full-time career out of this, but it's been like your mission, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to I was a musician first. I played drums for 20 years at this point. I never had the good fortune to find enough people to get to be in a committed band with.
Mm.
And the thing with doing the photos and having done like street team stuff was I'm gonna be committed to this stuff in some way. So if I'm not actively putting out music, I'm gonna be documenting it. I'm gonna be talking about it. I'm doing something productive.
Yeah.
Because even before I did the photos, I had, in the age of WordPress being free, I just started a blog out of nowhere when I was still like a freshman in high school. and not having any way to promote it, nothing. I just would write reviews completely unprompted, not necessarily even about new stuff. I did like a 10-part series on the Swedish band Catatonia just because I could.
Oh God. Well, that's the. I mean, what a phenomenal subject. They
Right.
Catatonia have been what, like at least 5 different bands at this point. Having
Yeah.
like started out like when Brave Murder Day and all that stuff,
Yes.
they were like a doom band.
Yeah. Death Doom
Um,
of its earliest variety.
yeah, and turning into just more I don't know, like an alternative doom band almost, and then into space rock and psychedelia. They've been so many different bands.
Right.
The funny part about that is they've been great the whole way.
And it's hard to find that.
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean, I think Cave In are a great example of that as well, having, switched styles and sounds up so frequently, uh,
Sure.
but remaining very, very good
Yeah.
the whole way. And I can't think of many other bands that really matched that sort of quantity
Yeah,
along
I
the ride.
mean, it was one of those things where I had a friend that kind of started beating the pathway that I did in getting to very Eurocentric metal, and then I just kind of kept broadening it as I had time to. But Catatonia is one of those bands that's always remained in my wheelhouse. And so that was, I think it was around the release of their record Night is the New Day. And so what I did was I covered their entire discography, and then I ended the series because it was the first time I would see them live. So it was like a mixed live review as well as my review of their latest record. And I have no idea to this day how many people read it,
Mhm.
but like my vaguest memory was that like 400 people had read the final article, and like one of the persons that supposedly it tracked was like from Saudi Arabia. I'm
Jesus.
like, okay, that's cool.
Mhm.
I possibly entertained one Catatonia fan in Saudi Arabia, or at least bizarrely treated someone to my opinion of Catatonia.
Oh man, I actually really kind of pine for when music like that was, I guess, still popular. I'm sure it is popular in its own way, but I, through a very skewed lens in my own mind, in the late '90s, everything was really starting to ramp up
Sure.
for uh, Century Media and Napalm Records, all of them.
Yeah.
Nuclear Blast, Relapse was having a very big renaissance.
Oh, those are
Um,
some of the best years of Relapse.
yeah,
I will say that till my dying day. That is some of the best time of Relapse records.
yeah. Well, I mean, considering Brutal Truth were still very, very much a touring mechanism.
Yeah.
They were. I played with them a bunch of times during that period, when with my old grindcore band, and
Okay.
man, they were like they were a force of nature almost.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I pine for those days, not because everything is bad now or something, because music I would argue is actually better in a lot of ways now than it was then. But
Sure.
I think I don't know. I think it's because it was so new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like these things had existed precursor to even when I was old enough to start going to shows, really. But it was it was dangerous. It was you could still got fucked with for going to these shows. You still
Oh, definitely.
like I vividly remember getting the shit beat out of me going to school, with the skateboard in one hand and like a Napalm Death t-shirt on, and getting called a Satanist, a freak, and a few other euphemisms that I honestly won't repeat because they're, derogatory towards homosexuals.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that was part of the fun too.
Oh, definitely. I,
Just
you know,
being other for a cisgendered white male. there was no other time in my life where, like, growing up in privilege, basically, even though we were poor, if you're white, you grew up in some sort of privilege. Let's face it.
Sure.
It was the first time I could really like empathize with people for being other.
Yeah.
And it gave me a really great, viewpoint into what it was really like for my uncle at the time and my cousins who were people of color. And, you know, I think I needed that because it molded my viewpoint and certainly informed my worldview. you
Sure.
know,
Yeah, it's an involuntary education.
I'm glad of it. I envy the youth now because nothing shocking, as Jane's Addiction said. Uh, there's not much you can do now to really, I don't know, freak people out outside of being trans, because that's still a hot button thing. But um, what was it like that in your very small town as well? I'm assuming.
Well, um, I so here's the thing. My skin tone is my great cloak. I'm Mexican and Italian.
Hmm.
My grandparents both immigrated from Italy, both different parts. My grandfather's from Sicily. My grandmother's from Naples. My Mexican family is from south of Mexico, Michoacan specifically. So I had the, whether you call it misfortune or privilege, to come out more fair than some of my relatives.
Hmm.
So depending on where I go, many people, see me as the, dare I say, upstanding white man.
Hmm.
And then if I'm in the right lighting or the right room, the older, whether it's a Mexican gentleman, Guatemalan, someone of Latino or Hispanic descent, not to get too much into the census terms, will come over to me painstakingly, rapid firing Spanish at me. And I have to admit that my very much immigrant but very devoted American family never had the kindness to teach me Spanish. And I have to apologize that they have chosen the wrong person to seek help from.
Yeah.
To which they either shake their head, call me a disgrace,
Hmm.
or just walk away.
Wow.
And mind you, the small town that I'm in is also its own little microcosm because it's, like I said, it's a port town. So naturally, it brought a lot of immigrants. You will meet Italians, you will meet Croatians, you'll meet Greeks, you'll meet Slovakian people, you will meet, that whole Mediterranean sector, as well as people from all other places, because there's fish canneries, there's oil refineries. So those were the jobs they were able to get.
Yeah.
So it's this, this car crash of a bunch of cultures, and you just kind of try to sort out where you fit. And then you have the audacity to be into this alternative music that makes you even more othered from all these very traditional, very steeped in values and, things that go back to, in some people's minds, the dark ages of how life goes. And you just, you're a square peg trying to fit in a circle.
Hmm. Yeah, that had to give you some identity issues in
Oh,
your youth, I'm sure.
uh, if and when those identity issues resolve, call me.
No, yeah, it's still there. Yeah, of course.
I
Um, I often wonder, you know, how it would have shaken out had, say, someone like a Trump had emerged in the 1960s when this nation was fortunate enough to have someone like Kennedy as president, kind of moving the needle forward for
sure.
our culture at large. Let's say Nixon had succeeded with his initial thrust to become president, and Watergate never happened,
Oh
and
man.
we would be a vastly dissimilar nation. We'd be very different. I think we'd be a lot more of us would be aligned with the right, although sadly there are quite a bit, and things would be a lot more uptight and a lot less accepting. It's a blessing, really, the way things kind of shook out, especially for the LGBTQ community, because I mean, I grew up in the late 80s and early 90s, and that was definitely not a time to be loud and proud about anything.
No,
And the few people that I'd known who actually entrusted me with, their state of being,
sure.
I felt very afraid for them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was primarily into metal. I mean, I had my intro to heavy music in general funneled through both punk and metal, but
mm,
metal was like where I kind of found my initial niche in high school. And, for all intents and purposes, I think you'll agree, especially coming from a martial arts background, the machoism crap, it immediately others you in the metal scene.
oh yeah,
No matter how many times somebody in a Black Label Society vest calls me brother, I'm not their brother.
yeah. I'm not your guy.
And they know it.
Hmm.
They'll say it because it's part of being at the show, but you don't meet the bill.
Yeah. There's something about that whole mystification of masculinity, as if it's something to be proud of, like be acting like a barbarian and dressing like a Viking or a biker does not a man make. I mean,
No.
it's a cloak for a wounded psyche and a screaming inner child. These are people.
Well,
I don't know.
go ahead.
I just don't get them. I really don't understand them. I may think their music's all right, but I don't know. Even as much as I love Pantera, I don't really love people who love Pantera.
It's a hard thread to needle, man.
Yeah,
I I'll I enjoyed going to see Amon Amarth and going to the Pagan Fest tour and whatnot, but like I'm not under any illusion that I'm an Anglo-Saxon.
right.
I know where my roots come from. Likely the people that I'm supposed to be dressing like or imitating are the people that killed my ancestors.
Right.
I'm not gonna act like it.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm not into that brand of cosplay.
Hmm.
Thanks, but no thanks. Invitation got lost in the mail.
Yeah. But there's a world of it out there that I think harbors a lot of less than savory characters too.
Oh,
I mean,
definitely.
like hardcore was definitely a place. Growing up in the hardcore scene in the 80s and early 90s, there was a lot of Nazis, and they didn't have to hide back then. So we were in a lot of fistfights with said people.
Oh, sure.
But even among our ranks who were not Nazis, there was a lot of macho bigotry and sexism that occurred on a daily basis, even among the straight edge vegetarian and vegan kid set.
Of course, the people who are going to save the world, right?
Yeah. They didn't even think they were really going to save the world. They just thought that they were, elite because they abstained from the evils of consuming flesh and intoxicants. Which good for you. More power
Right.
to you, but I'll be over here getting fucked up and getting laid.
I,
And
you know,
I'm good on that. You know what I mean? That was, I was a garbage head. There's no getting around it. But I'm glad to see that is not really accepted anymore. At least not wholesale.
yeah.
You have to go to like something like a Black Label Society show where it's going to get real broy real fast. Um, and that reminds me, yeah, and then we'll get back on to the subject of you.
Oh,
I'm on a tangent here, but
no worries. This
uh,
is what these conversations are for.
yeah, um, I just watched a video of that actor Jason Momoa in a quote unquote mosh pit at a
Right.
Pantera show,
I think I know what you're referencing.
and a dude's not moshing. He's pogoing and maybe running in a circle.
Sure.
It's not a mosh pit, A. And B, he may like that kind of music, but it felt like a photo op to me.
Here's my thing with situations like that. The dare I say gospel preached at those events is that everybody's welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it cool that he's into that music? Sure.
Of course.
If I was there that night, it'd be like, hey man, you know, throw up the horns. Let's check out Metallica. Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Second part to that is, who the hell in that venue is gonna honestly want to mosh with that dude? They're gonna get freaking clobbered.
Yeah, they're gonna get milled right down. But I don't know. Like, people make there's such a cult of personality around actors and stuff like that.
It's clickbait, man. At the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think the question that it begs from my end is, you know, could a person like that really even harken back to a time when it wasn't about their own cult of personality enough, and shrink that down enough to actually immerse themselves in an experience like that and truly enjoy it? Because he spent the whole show getting his picture taken by people with a camera in his face, and I don't know, man.
I don't know. I think there's a place and a time to, you know, like it would be nice to hear like that answer from a person like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, I'm not saying I know these people, but I think of actors like Lawrence Fishburne, this person that definitely, you say that name, most people know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
But when he was an unknown struggling actor, was hanging out with people like Basquiat or Keith Haring.
And Fishbone.
And was truly in the art scene that, you know, is still leaving its mark. Even after both the artists I just named off are long dead. Their art scene has moved beyond their capability of still creating work, being that they've left this mortal coil. But I think that's someone that you see that ascended to a certain fame that I hope, in my ignorance of not knowing him personally, I hope remembers who that kid is. That seems to still have a link to that bit of culture.
I think he does, because he volunteered to narrate the documentary about the band Fishbone. Who better, because he was friends with them, and, you know, he was there for it all.
Right.
And also, like, you know, he didn't get paid much money, because Fishbone, even though they were on a major label and were pretty heralded at one time, they're not a commodity. They're not like, you're not going to make money off of a project like that. That's strictly a passion project.
For sure.
So something tells me, yeah, he is still connected.
I think the thing with actors that have ascended to maybe similar fame in this more current era, it's that they're almost used to having to see themselves as a walking product. So they get used to this, like, I'm in sales mode. I need to take the photo. I need to make the Instagram reel. I need to do the TikTok. I can't say no to people in public because it's going to become a news bite on TMZ tonight.
Yeah.
It's that they, even if they don't choose it, they almost feel forced as like a protection to not become somebody's fodder the next day.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there are people that get off on it, and, you know, that's for them to deal with in their own time. But I want to believe that if they even have a genuine passing interest in these, you know, to bring up that buzzword again, alternative cultures, it's not by accident. They ended up there for some reason or another.
Yeah.
Possibly the same reason a lot of us end up there. It's just that they ascended to a certain level of fame now where it becomes a subject of conversation. That everybody likes to act like, oh, you're into that weird music. I can't believe you're into that wild stuff. You know, this day on Good Morning America.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I'll admit the clip looks funny, but I'll give you a hall pass.
Yeah.
You get a hall pass from me because I have a feeling there's still some bit of a kid in you there that might have had a Metallica shirt in high school. That for you being in that weird Instagram thing that nobody will get away from for a few more weeks while they're on tour, that was a big moment for you. That you got to be inches away from the band, that you likely got to meet them. That kid in you is freaking the hell out and is having the most amazing night of their lives. Now that you're the 40-year-old movie star, well, you know, it gets talked about by everybody like that they were standing next to you. And that's unfortunate. I actually like feel bad in that moment that you can't just be allowed to be the kid, just like, I'm seeing Metallica feet away from me. This is amazing.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you a very, very left of center question.
Go for it.
Now, I'm sure you've photographed a lot more than just bands. I'm sure I'm correct in assuming that.
I would actually maybe surprise you in saying I haven't.
Really?
My intent in ever having a camera in my hands really is to document live music. I appreciate people that, you know, try to make the effort to capture maybe the crowd in some of the shots. I mean, you interviewed an acquaintance of mine in Mike Thorne. I love some of the shots that he gets of the pit. And I don't know if you follow him, Rob Coons. He's based out of the Bay Area. The photos he gets of the way some kids are dancing at hardcore shows or even some of the thrash shows, I totally dig it. But that's just not my bag.
Yeah.
My pit is, you know, either being in the front or being in the photo pit and taking in what the artist is presenting that night and documenting it as best as I can. I don't know how single focused I can be, but the reason I wanted to document it is because I wanted to have a clear memory of what I loved about that show. And I hope that, if nothing else, somebody that might have been standing next to me, or is, you know, if it's a bigger venue up in the rafters, sees one of my photos and is like, hey, I remember that night, and is instantly brought back there, and, you know, maybe feels good for 5 more minutes of their day.
Have you ever taken a photo of something that you can't really explain, was what I was going to ask. Because I know a lot of people, even in photographing bands and shows and stuff, where they're like a disembodied hand where it should never have been, or you know, something of that ilk. I recently saw a video where there was a high school band playing, and there was a very demonic looking creature behind the guy's half stack, and it wasn't part of the show.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That's how I was kind of wondering if you'd ever come across something like that, because that's a topic of great interest to me.
I would not say I had a ton of that happen, but those are some of my favorite photos, the few that I have, where I capture these, whether it's, you know, that the how do I put it, that the shutter goes a little slower than I expect. And I will say that's kind of one of the beautiful imperfections of digital, in that it harkens back to film occasionally, where the computer maybe doesn't communicate right in the camera. And luckily it brings you back a little bit to analog, and it messes up or it glitches out.
Yeah.
And for someone like me that doesn't want perfection, it's the most satisfying thing to capture. For the people that bow down at the altar of Photoshop everything, that's something they're just going to blow to hell and turn into a graphic design project. But
so,
I've definitely caught some of that, what you're touching on, for sure.
What have you captured?
I think my best examples partly are from my working with the band Amun-Ra. I'm actually wearing one of the shirts that I got as a payment when I last worked with them right now. I love those guys dearly, and I look forward to any time that I can see them live, whether I have a camera or not. The cathartic nature of their music is something that lends to you probably seeing and feeling certain presences, auras, however you want to call it, in those rooms throughout the night, but particularly during their set. And the visceral, almost disembodied nature, particularly in I think in every member, but I think you see it most documented, particularly through the vocalist Colin. I have some photos where, he's contorting his body, and like the geometry of it is not something that's going to make sense to the human eye.
Yeah.
And I don't really choose to touch up my photos, partly to be able to say in these moments when I'm being asked about it, like, that's not an alteration. You're seeing what happened.
Truly candid.
Yeah. I do as little as possible to ensure that what I took was with intent, and that the viewer is seeing it as I intended it. And I'm not making an artificial visual. We deal in a lot of artificiality in this world already.
Mm-hmm.
Just full stop. That's not a surprise to anybody, but I it's an unfortunate truth. So if there's one thing I can do in documenting a band, I'm going to not add a single thing to what they're trying to present to me or to anybody.
That's respectful.
It's like I said, I'm a musician first. I go into that room remembering that I could easily not be there.
Yeah.
It's not, it is a privileged position that I get to document it. I'm very aware that I don't need to be there. As far as I'm concerned, I'm there because I have a privileged opportunity, and I'm going to make the most of it. My responsibility is first to the band, second to the audience, third to myself, and it ends there. It's like, the band is my client, even if they don't know I exist. If I've, stumbled into this chance, or it's because somebody mentioned me to someone or whatever, I'm immediately indebted to the band, whether they're, whether I'm on their radar or not. And I take that very seriously. I don't want to ever take even the slightest chance of misrepresenting them in any way.
I have a photo. I'll as soon as I get it digitized, which this is a taken with a, oh god, I forget the camera now. Oh, it's my old Olympus
Okay.
film camera. It was a Neurosis show, and someone who I know who wasn't alive anymore was at the show. Impossibly.
Hey, it's Neurosis, man.
So
That's my answer.
I take and Steve Von Till knows this story because I told it to him. We were at the Trocadero in Philadelphia. My friend had just died like maybe 6-8 months beforehand. All of our favorite band was Neurosis, always. And I'm taking a picture of Scott and Steve at front of stage, and there's my friend, like his head is just visible there, standing, like just his profile. But it's very clear. It's a very clear photograph. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know if I actually need the explanation, but it was one of those instances of I don't know, proof of something other.
Oh, absolutely.
Which I've always believed there is something beyond, like, we're not going to get into like, God, Buddha, or Krishna or whatever, but there's something mystical about human existence.
Oh, I don't know how people can still deny it.
I have a lot of friends and a lot of people who come on the show who 1,000,000% deny it. And, I have a lot of friends who are atheists, and they're religious atheists, as I call them, because they're so dedicated to being atheists that they would discount anything spiritual or mystical that occurs right in front of them. Which is fine. I mean, believe whatever you want. I'm good with
exactly.
It. Man, I've seen too much to just straight up say definitively this is or is not. I've just seen too much in life.
Oh, same here. Full stop.
Oh yeah.
First,
this is
I don't know if you can see that clearly. That is the Souls at Zero.
Souls at Zero with the Ouroboros around it. Yeah.
I got that the first of the 3 nights of the 30th anniversary in Neurosis in San Francisco. Got that morning and saw them play the first of the 3 shows that weekend.
My God.
That band, I think you'll more than know where I'm going, has left a mark on me that no other band can.
I'm going to show you something. What shelf is it on, Pete? It's got to be here. There. Yeah. Oh, just sit there. Come on. Oh, it's so heavy. Have you ever seen this before?
I've never seen it this way. I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, this thing, it weighs about like 40 pounds. It's everything up to a certain point. But
I'm sad to say I had nowhere near the scratch to afford that at the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I shouldn't have, but I already had all of these in like triplicate.
Certainly.
But I had to have it.
You couldn't pass up on it.
I think there's only a few of these in existence. This record is probably one of the most expensive ones on my shelf. This copy of Silver and Blood. I have so much Neurosis, man. I have so much Neurosis.
I think I luckily found it for a steal. In my mind, the person that I bought it didn't know how cheaply they were selling it to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I found an original pressing of Word is Law from Alchemy Records.
Oh my God.
On Discogs. And that's a record I'm never getting rid of. I'm very proud to have that in my collection.
As you should be. I have first presses of every Neurosis record, and my copy on Alchemy is not in good shape.
I was actually surprised how good shape that copy was, considering how cheaply the person was selling it. I just took it as a more than welcome find, hit that buy it now button, and didn't ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't even worry about it. Just do it. But I have I've invested so much into these things. I'm very fetishistic about it, but to me, with a few bands, Neurosis being the top of that heap, even after everything that's happened with them, it's not them, it's one person. People shouldn't take it out on Neurosis at large, but I have a special kind of attachment to that band.
Absolutely.
And that binds me with so many other people who've been on this show, from walks of life that you would never dream that their favorite band is Neurosis, like Michael Malarkey from the show Vampire Diaries and that Project Blue Book. This is his favorite band's Neurosis. Loves Neurosis. Pretty much you name them. Like name somebody who's been on the show. They all have a tie to Neurosis. The band Lycia, they have ties to the band Neurosis. They're friends with members of the band. Like it's just they're ubiquitous. They transcend genre and like sound. And I don't know if there's ever going to be another band quite like them. I think Amon Ra comes very close.
The way I like to word it is that Amon Ra is kind of a familial link. I feel okay saying that, being that I know the gents in Amon Ra and the way that they have expressed their gratitude to Neurosis in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very grateful to say that thanks to Amun-Ra partly, through knowing them and then my previous opportunities, every time I ever saw Neurosis, I had a camera in my hand. I saw them 13 times and I photographed them 13 times. And I'll cherish those photos as long as I can. There's a definite through line there.
Yeah. And one of the best shows I'd ever seen in my life was Neurosis, Amun-Ra, and Converge. The best triple bill that you could ever possibly put together. And
that was the first tour I properly worked with Amun-Ra, and I flew out for the 2 New York shows.
Oh, I was at those.
Naturally, we would be in the same room without even knowing it.
Yeah, of course. Well, it makes sense, right? But there's this tribal thing though, where like people who love those bands, like we weave in and out of the genres, right? Like
definitely.
We're hardcore kids, but we're also in metal kids, but we're also kind of gothy, but we're we
listen to noise,
listen to like ambient music and Leonard Cohen and Morrissey and Slayer.
Yeah. It's all fair game.
Right. I think that the generation of kids that are like, behind me, behind you, in their teens and 20s now, like those strictures of genre and scene are almost completely gone. It seems that way.
It's a more foreign concept.
I don't know if it's good or bad, but I think it's pretty interesting. And I don't know where that leaves, the bands, but I really am excited for what the future withholds. I mean, a lot of guys my age, I'm pushing 50.
Yeah.
A lot of guys my age malign bands like Turnstile. I think Turnstile are a phenomenal band. I think they're a really great version of late period Bad Brains and a more brutal 311. But they're interesting. There's no reason to be mad at a band for being popular.
Oh, absolutely not. I was kind of late, kind of early on hearing Turnstile in their like beginning ascent,
Mm-hmm.
and luckily had the opportunity to see them before they ended up being openers for Blink-182 and whatnot. It was no surprise to me to see that tour announcement.
Yeah,
it was practically inevitable.
Yeah,
they're a band that has a sound that either whether you hear it in a squat for 50 people or in an arena for 50,000, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not going to make everybody happy that makes sense, but they'd be lying through their teeth if they didn't say it made sense.
Oh yeah.
It's accessible. That's that word. It's accessible.
And the thing that's great about that is if there are new kids getting into hardcore because of Turnstile, who knows where that's going to lead them. These might be the next kids in anything from a youth crew styled posi-core band all the way to something like Crossover, like early Cro-Mags or Corrosion of Conformity. Who knows where it's going to take them. And everybody has that gateway drug. For me, it was Anthrax.
Sure.
And like Anthrax were, their ties to New York hardcore were kind of my through line when I was a kid, because I was still pretty young when SOD, Speaking English or Die came out.
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, this is it's like metal, but it there's no frills. And my buddy was like, yeah, because it's a hardcore band. I'm like, hardcore? Like porn? No, dude, hardcore punk.
Yeah.
Oh, like the Clash? Not like the Clash, you dickhead. And that was my first concert, was the Clash. So that was my whole scope of punk. I was a real young kid, was the Ramones, the Clash, the Sex Pistols, the British bands, and the Ramones. Hardcore it didn't make sense to me until I got context for it. But that SOD record was I got into that through Anthrax. That was my gateway drug. My love of thrash made me a hardcore kid.
I could see that.
You know,
I see how that, that track follows.
well,
I mean, I even say there's some similar track marks for how I ended up where I did.
well, take us through that little jaunt.
I mean, I was entirely too young to be hearing it, but it's how it goes. I think I heard Metallica the very first time 5 or 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through my older cousin who I now play music with and my older uncle. And I remember I know I was really young still. I just remember headbanging to the breakdown of One
Mm-hmm.
in the back of my grandma's car. And, it's like a year and a half later, I'm meeting the older kid in my neighborhood. Mind you, like I said, it's this tiny suburb of LA. And, well, first he kind of shows me his cred because he lends me the cassette of Master of Puppets.
Yeah.
I had only heard Injustice for All. So it's like, oh, there's another one of these? And, my head comes off when I hear Orion for the first time and Leper Messiah. And then he plays me this band Nevermore. Now, Nevermore, very underrated American thrash band.
Yes.
But also very progressive. Because it's not straightforward thrash that's meant to just make you a mosh monster. It's gonna bend your brain a bit.
Yeah.
And rest his soul, you got Warrell Dane soaring over those thrash songs like an operatic singer. And it's just messing with your footing every which way, but it's good.
See, there was that era of thrash that you got to sample like after kind of like its first real rise that never went away either.
Right.
And I was damn young. I mean, and it was an older cousin as well that turned me on to Anthrax, Metallica, the Big Four, plus Exodus, Testament, all that stuff. My cousin Eddie, and he had drawn me the Fistful of Metal record cover.
Okay.
He was a great artist, and he gave it to me, and it blew my mind because there's a fist coming through the back of someone's head. I'm like, what? Did you come up with this? Like, no, that's the cover of an album, bro. Do you want to hear it? Yes, I fucking do. Yes. Does it sound like Iron Maiden? It was the first thing I asked him because I loved Iron Maiden when I was little. He's like, it's heavier. No, nothing's
not
heavier
possible.
than Iron Maiden.
Not possible.
So like that blew my world apart. And as much as Anthrax is still kind of like my pinnacle of the Big Four, as it were,
sure.
It was an epiphany. It was a fucking epiphany when I heard Ride the Lightning.
Oh, absolutely. That's my favorite record.
Mine too. And I liked Metallica before that, but this was, whoa. Like I want to be a bass player. It was that moment. There were a few musicians that made me want to play bass. Geddy Lee was definitely one of them. Slim Jim Phantom from the Stray Cats was definitely one of them.
Classic.
Yeah. And obviously we're talking about Iron Maiden here, like the quintessential bass player, the guy who writes all the fucking music and lyrics.
Right.
But Cliff Burton, man.
Cliff was just another level.
He made me want to play.
I mean, the whole band still says it. I just read a quote from Kirk still saying that he still wonders what And Justice for All would have sounded like with Cliff on it.
Mm-hmm. I still wonder
some years after the fact.
I still wonder what that album would have sounded like with a bass on it.
That's what everybody wonders what it would have sounded like at this point. I think the only person that doesn't wonder that is Jason Newsted.
They fucked him out of it. It's not his fault. He's a great bass player.
Oh, yeah.
So you just recently came back from shooting, correct? Like,
Yeah, I got my 2 shows in one day, which I hadn't done in a long time
mm-hmm.
in New York. Damn, that day was a whirlwind. My flight had been delayed. I didn't even know if I was going to make the first show. I got into New York like 3 hours late. I basically took an overpriced cab, threw my bag in my Airbnb, and just gunned it to get on the subway and hope to make it on time.
Mm-hmm.
And made it to that first show down at the Bowery. The room started spinning a bit because I hadn't eaten or drank anything since like the afternoon before, sometime in California. So I told my friend, I was like, I'm about to shoot another show in like 2 hours. If I don't get some food or at least some coffee in me, this is not going to go well. So I got to cut out.
Well, who did you shoot? Who were the bands?
So I had the privilege of shooting this awesome young thrash band called Slashers. I believe they're based out of New York City, and I believe they're finishing up a Northwest tour right now, if they're not already back in New York. But they started this awesome day in this, basement area of the Bowery Electric. And honestly, it was one of the first times in a long time that being at a show felt like being at a family reunion. It was so welcoming. It was this awesome all ages gathering. I have to, if I'm going to talk about it, make the shout out to Drew Stone.
Oh, Drew's an
Stone
awesome dude, man.
Films,
He's great.
Antidote, all the credits. He's the mastermind behind those shows, and it's a true service to whether it's the community there that I got to see showcased in front of me, or the people like me that get to come and visit and happen to be there on the days those shows are happening. It is such a gift. I didn't get to shoot photos of them, but I did see this band, Mr. Pickle. It was their first show in 10 years. And that's why I really wanted to play up the family atmosphere, because while they did make this hilarious flyer that was like on the level of like something you'd see for like Carnivore back in the day, where it was this little leaflet that basically was a series of warnings saying, if you are offended by dick jokes, like this kind of unnecessary but hilarious list to read off, they basically said, just don't come downstairs for like the next half hour. And then I look to my right as they're about to start their set, and it's pretty clear that either the drummer's girlfriend or wife is there, and they're probably, I'm guessing, 5-year-old child.
Yeah.
And she's dancing along with this music that's about hating their job or boob jokes and all these things. And it's just like, some people would be like horrified at seeing this. I love seeing this. I absolutely love seeing this. This is this little girl getting to see her dad doing what she loves, dancing around with family friends and a bunch of strangers and feeling safe.
Yeah.
And this is why people like myself get into this scene. These weird happenstance moments that you don't predict happen right in front of you. And you feel that all too unfamiliar safety that you hardly ever find. And it's so damn important.
Yeah, because
to
you're seeing your
create
tribe
moments like that.
Yeah.
And, whether it's the little girl that was probably, barely school age, or whether it's someone like, say, maybe her dad that's in his 50s or 60s getting to play with his band for the first time in 10 years. If you have that opportunity, you can't pass it up. And it's so awesome that it is free, where Drew was able to make this agreement with the Bowery Electric. You contribute by getting a drink or dropping something in the tip bin. But the main thing is that it's accessible, it's all ages, and you're basically guaranteed to have a great afternoon, no matter if you know any of the music walking in.
So where do you think your collected works are headed? Do you have an eye towards maybe doing a compendium or a photo book of some kind in the future?
Um, my main focus right now, I've been contributing to No Echo for, let's see, I started communications with that in 2018, so it's like 5 years at this point. I am leaning towards the avenue of Substack has become very interesting to me with the few blogs that I've been following. I'm thinking I might start a digital zine on there at the beginning of 2024. I haven't formatted it yet. This is sort of my first proper talking about it outside of my head. So it's still very premature, so to speak, in talking about it. But I want to make the effort in putting that together because it's no secret. I don't just enjoy hardcore and metal as much as it is my roots.
Yeah.
And so when I do go cover a noise show, or maybe even have the opportunity to cover a more, dare I say, pop singer or something, I want to have an avenue to just host those images to whoever wants to access them and not feel like that they have to, wade their ways through the uncharted territory of the internet. If someone finds my work, whether it's Instagram, them to just be able to access whatever drew them there first and then stumble across, whether it's an old photo set that I do for the sake of archiving and it's an old thing of Neurosis photos, or a band like Cult Leader, Cave In, whatever. Hey, maybe they don't ever listen to the music, but it makes them interested in photography, even just to document whatever they like documenting.
That's I think that's a pretty important move, and I'm going to tell you, Substack seems to be. I'm moving over there, not completely,
Yeah.
but my podcast is already available on Substack, and my background's in writing.
Okay.
I'm going to, I've recently completed a novel. Once I have that in motion, out to, an editor, and I can kind of take my hands off of it. I'm also moving to more full-time kind of thing with Substack, because I used to write a blog too. And as I said, I started out with fanzines, but I think Substack is kind of like the next logical step from social media, because it is more immersive and creator based.
Yeah.
And not in a vanity sense, not like in a TikTok sense where you're just like standing there like doing synchronized dances with people or whatever. I think it's a haven for artists right now, and as long as that doesn't get bastardized,
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I'm very much wanting to be a part of that world. I wonder though, are there any bands that are like holy grail bands that maybe no longer play, but are like a favorite that you wish you could have photographed? I'm sure the list is long, but if there are any like really real standouts.
I mean, Nevermore, since we were talking about them, I didn't even get to see a proper Nevermore set. I luckily had the good fortune to see World Dane play a solo show where he had put his band together at that time. And I think they played a few Nevermore songs, but it was mainly stuff from his solo record he released before his passing, Praises to the War Machine. A fantastic record. If anyone likes music along those lines and hasn't heard it, absolutely check it out. I mean, if I'm gonna aim high, because it's this hypothetical conversation, I would have loved to shoot Joy Division.
I mean, none of us got a chance to see Joy Division, but
we're we're talking here.
Yeah, absolutely.
While it's still possible, I would absolutely not mind at all the opportunity to shoot The Cure.
Yeah.
If I could have done that on this most recent tour, I would have absolutely jumped at the chance.
They were incredible. They were incredible on this tour.
And that's the reason why I do look at this Substack that I'm wanting to start in 2024 as a separate avenue. It doesn't mean that I'll not write a review on occasion for No Echo. It's more that I take a responsibility and respect to Carlos at No Echo for always being an open door policy with my contributions. And I take a reality check, you know, that there is a specific audience that looks to No Echo for certain coverage.
Yeah.
They're not itching to hear my talking about a noise artist or some obscure sound artist or, you know, whatever other music outside of hardcore and metal that I might have stumbled upon. It's not saying that they may not be a fan of it or that they might not be open to it, but they kind of know the wheelhouse that No Echo aims for.
Yeah.
And it's a welcome wheelhouse to host. So I don't want to do a disservice in presenting a piece to Carlos that honestly won't attract attention, or that would only attract attention if somebody's just bored. I want to be able to host things independently and openly for anyone to wander into. And then as far as, you know, my contributions to this hardcore metal community, some will maybe end up on Substack. If there's the opportunity and the openness still for No Echo, I'll shoot it over and, you know, everybody benefits.
Well, we're at that time of the show where I ask my one pre-prescribed question. It's the only one. It's the only one I have written. I don't know how familiar you are with this question, so I'll just come out with it.
Yeah, shoot.
What is it that terrifies you on an existential level?
Oh, man. Let's see if I can... As you can tell, I'm good at tangential answers, so I'll see if I can siphon down. I don't have a perfect answer for that.
It's not a perfect question, man.
Well, I kind of feel like it is, though, in a certain way, because I think the terrifying thing that has always kind of knitted me with existence in general is how close I feel like I've lived in death at times. I've had an insane amount of near-death experiences compared to what people would say, you know, is my chronological age. I'm about 6 months away from turning 32. But I mean, even though I don't remember it, there's some arguments that would say my first, you know, depending on how you view things, my first near-death experience was before I was even out of the womb. My mom nearly lost me like a few months into her being pregnant with me. And so, like, having knowledge of that and then having a ton of near-death experiences throughout my childhood, throughout my teens, it's this thing where you become aware of your mortality to a certain level, and you become aware of this collection of things that's happened to you, and it's like, okay, either my existence really did need to happen, and I don't know what the fallout of that's going to be, but I'm going to try to do it as best as I can, or I just have to accept that I don't understand it and write it out as best as I can.
Oh man, yeah. There's as close as I've been to you know, shuffling off this mortal coil and having actually once done just that. Believe it or not, that isn't the thing that dogs my heels the most.
Sure.
And I don't know what I don't. The reason why I asked a question is because I don't fully understand why the things that terrify us. Because death, for as much as it has obviously dogged you, it's still something that we're all going to share. It's inevitable. It's a part of the cycle. It's arguably the most important part of the cycle because
Right.
how you go out is pretty memorable to everyone that loves you. Uh, to me, existence is more terrifying. It really is.
Uh,
Just being here, being present, and accountable for my actions, and how truly dire our circumstances currently are on this planet. Uh, that seems to terrify me more than anything anymore.
I won't argue that
You know,
for a moment.
but uh, this was all promised in the 80s. The culture of even action movies, everything was preparing us for Armageddon and war. Armageddon and war. Um, it it makes perfect sense. I like the music that I like, especially my favorite band, Neurosis, because they're very much an apocalyptic sounding band.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it's my own personal death that is the real clincher for me. It's the fact that we're living on the edge of what could be the end for everybody. And
It
and
certainly appears that way more often than not.
mhm. And to me that makes me sad because you know, eh, I mean, of course everybody dies. It's all of the beauty that we did bring into the world as a culture of people. Um a lot of bad came with it too, obviously. A lot of bad culture, a lot of bad everything. But think of all the Jackson Pollocks of the world, all the James Joyces, all of the you know just name art from any sector of the arts themselves. uh they they have no value if there's no one to behold them.
Right.
You have to hope that once we've done the deed and ruined everything for everyone, that there are some, maybe the aliens really will come down and start checking things out, and they'll become Neurosis fans and Basquiat fans, and their favorite movie will be The Shining, and you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you almost hope that's what happens because to me, the greatest shame would be that all of the greatness that we've achieved as humans is going to be outshone by all of the horrible things that we've visited upon our own home by shitting where we eat.
I I hear that.
It's fucking scary, man.
Yeah. I definitely hear that. And I think it's like we were touching on, like as far as my doing what I do, it's my kicking back against that.
Yeah.
It's like I don't mind, you know, a bum shoulder and two bad knees later still refusing to not spit back and kick a few times.
So, on amidst all of this, and obviously, it's very rewarding for you to photograph bands and stuff. But like, how do you get by? What is your living?
um it's been a mixed bag, man. Um the last 5 years have been a journey all its own because shooting a show, I suffered a concussion, and um, it was one of those things that when I talk to the many doctors that I have, they say, "Oh, this should have faded off a long time ago." Um, I'm as proud as I'm not to say 5 years later, it didn't fade off.
Yeah.
Um, no one really knows how many concussions I've had at this point in my life, and I don't either. And even if I was told them today, I probably wouldn't remember it because of the short-term memory loss that I have.
Yeah.
So for the last 5 years, I've, maybe not according to the state of California, but for lack of a better term and under no legal proof, been disabled to the point that I'm not totally functional under traditional employment.
Mm.
I am, on a bad day, quite a risk to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to fall. I basically have what I've summated from reading and a lot of denial from doctors, kind of early signs of what may end up being Parkinson's. I don't really know. I get a lot of tremors, muscular stuff. I lose my train of thought. It's a mess. I'm not going to go into like trying to describe it all. I've had the good enough fortune to have supportive parents that have allowed me to live with them for the last few years. And I hustle where I can. When I put out a zine, I sold it as few as I could.
Yeah.
Lost more money on it than I made, but it helped along the way. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, I took an opportunity through a friend to work in a random warehouse for an e-commerce company. Ended up accidentally taking a pipe to the head, and with all my brain trauma already, that was like the cherry on top.
Yeah.
3 days into a 5-day job that I had to then quit because I was blind in my eye for an hour and didn't want to go to the doctor because it was the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So luckily, I'm seeing clear through my glasses right now. That faded off, but the brain damage didn't. So I'm doing the best I can, and that's partly why I want to start this Substack. In all honesty, it's a format that I can say, hey, I totally get it. Funds are limited. Enjoy my photos as much as you can with the time you have and at no cost.
Mhm.
But if you're able to pitch in and allow me to do this a little more easily, absolutely grateful for whatever dollar amount is possible.
It's freaky that you mentioned the whole multiple concussion thing. I'm a plumber by trade.
Okay.
I just recently suffered a pretty substantial one that could have easily been the career ender.
Yeah.
7-foot trench.
Oh, geez.
I fall in and land headfirst on a curb box.
Oh, man.
Which is a big brass valve. Thank God I am Polish, because I absorbed a good bit of the brunt of that with my skull. But I've had so many concussions being a hardcore kid, being a skateboarder, being a baseball player. Um, I'm surprised in my advancing years that I still have the cognition
Oh, yeah.
to walk, chew bubble gum, and take care of my very, very young son. Because at my age, I have a 4-year-old son. My daughter's 22. My son's 4.
Oh, I'm aware of the pictures of Kanan. You got an
Yeah,
awesome little dude there, man.
he's the best. He's the best. He is a little metalhead too, and it's beautiful to behold. But man, like, people don't understand head trauma. That's very at any time that could be it. Like, I don't know, man. I must have been an idiot to have done all of the things I'd done for the sheer love of doing them. Like, I've had at least a dozen concussions from hardcore shows, whether I was playing in the band or just attending.
Yeah. Surprisingly, I say this every time, that concussion I got, it was at a Converge show.
Mm-hmm.
Full disclosure. That was the first time I had ever had a concussion at a show.
No kidding.
I I'm shocked because of my usual track record. I'm quite prone to end up being the one that walks out with an injury. You know, I've sprained my wrists at shows. I've nearly dislocated my knee at shows. All those things. But that was the one time I had head trauma, and it put me on bed rest for 2 weeks, and I've basically not been the same since.
Yeah. Did your personality change?
I feel like it has a bit. Um, I've I look at it this way. So I this is my uh, on a side note, this is actually part of what even like originally attracted me to your podcast. I love that it was called The Book of Very, Very Bad Things, because I almost feel like if I was to like make a tiny short story, slightly fictional, but somewhat based in reality of like certain happenings in my life, that's almost what I'd want to call it.
Why do you think the show's called that?
I preaching to the choir here, but I just figured I'd mention it.
Yeah, and there's merit to having lived a life full of malady, truly. If not for anything else, then to be a cautionary tale to other people. But I think long suffering builds the best characters.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
we we bear the scars for it, certainly, but I maybe it's because I'm a cultural Catholic, and you know, like the whole Jesus thing, but and martyrs at large. But my favorite people invariably throughout life were people who, like Mickey Rourke, like
Sure.
you know, Tom Waits, people who've like been through it, like just got chewed up and spit out and keep coming back. That indomitable human spirit, to me, that is that's the most inspiring thing. Jacob Bannon from Converge is a prime example of this. Like, he has a bevy of mental health issues, and there's really no reason that he should have ever made it, and he made it on his own terms.
Yeah.
Despite all of these things, who would you rather root for? Most people root for underdogs in any scenario, right? I'm no different, but I like my heroes with a little bit of smut on their noses. You know what I mean? I'm a little less Superman, a little more Batman.
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't set out to be of that stripe, but it just so happens I turned out to be just that, you know, this ex-heroin addict goofball that, you know, I just said, you know, you can't have me.
Yeah.
You know, you can have my friends, and that's terrible, and I hate to see bad things happen to everybody, and they disappear, but I I I refuse to succumb to my circumstances, period. End of story. And I think that that's you.
I'm trying, man. I mean, so like to give you the context of maybe like the bindings of this little book I've got,
Hmm.
you know, the birth. Um, when I was 15, and I could literally, if I walked outside my door, at least if my shoulder was better, throw a stone right to where my head was. I was jumped by a gang, uh, literally like 2 minute walk from where I'm sitting right now. My ear was stomped in. Um, I had like 5 of my front teeth kind of moved around. Luckily, they didn't have to be pulled, but
Mm.
my smile's a bit jagged. Makes for an interesting story. And then I look at that third binding with with a TBD at the end of it as my concussion. And ironically, uh, the jump when I was jumped happened when I was 15, and the concussion happened when I was 25 and a couple weeks from turning 26. And I really didn't think about that until just now. It was exactly 10 years apart, pretty much. That these two very pivotal things that like very seemingly changed who I am, how I interact with this world happened. I don't have explanations for it, and I have a mix of grief and gratitude for it all.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, for the sake of being clear, I never would hold a band responsible for my being injured at their shows.
Yeah.
I've had so many different things go wrong at shows, and had so many people say, well, oh, why didn't you reach out to the band? Why didn't you reach out to the booker? Those people aren't getting paid any money. Why am I going to be the nonsensical person in the room to try to make this about me? I went there on my own. I went there at my own risk. What happened, happened. Get over it.
Yeah.
Anybody with enough logic in the room would tell you the same thing.
Of course. And anyone who, you know, has an allegiance to that scene would tell you the same thing, because we put ourselves in these situations willingly. And anyone, like, when I was growing up, there was one of the kids from my high school decided to play weirdo for the weekend with us, because he ran with us, and he ran with the preppy kids during the week.
Not good.
Yeah, one of those. And there's a rather I guess for the East Coast anyway, legendary club that was a block away from my home called Cece's.
Okay.
And he came there with us, and I can't even maybe sick of it all. Maybe
it's clobbering time.
Yeah, it is. It was clobbering time too, because this kid showed up in all of his hill figure glory, and this was before this was before hill figure became acceptable in hardcore in the later 90s. And he decided to get into the pit, and not in the right way. There was no circle pitting. He didn't even, you know, the kung fu in the pit was starting to happen at this point. He didn't try any of that. He just started swinging at people and jumping into people and jumping up and down and making a spectacle of himself.
Oh, man.
And the skinhead, who I still know and I'm still friends with, got whacked in the back of the head by this goof, turned around, kind of cocked his head to the side a little, as if to like question this person's very existence. And then with one punch, completely knocked him out. And as he was dropping, the second punch broke his orbital bone. Boom.
Yeah.
Poof. Done. And he was just like a sack of meat.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So it was our responsibility to drop this human being off at his parents' doorstep. At which point I was berated because I was the one they'd known, and I was always the Eddie Haskell of the crew.
You're responsible for him.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. And I was the one that everybody's parents liked, because I put on the act of the likable, blue-eyed, blonde-haired little surfer boy. Like, hey, everybody loves me. I'm Pete. Hey.
Oh, no.
And yeah, it didn't go too well.
Oh, no.
You know, tried to sue the club.
Sounds about right.
I ended up in court. It was a whole thing, just because this goof wanted to play hardcore kid for the weekend. But I feel like, you know, I think almost everybody's got a story similar to that. If they find themselves in these rooms long enough, and newcomers come along, and most of them are great, but there's always going to be one prick at the wedding. But man, it could have been so much worse. I was at a Life of Agony show where somebody got shot.
You know,
like, weird shit happened in the 90s, man. That's just what it was. And I think you can attest to the fact that weird shit happened in the 2000s as well.
It still happens, man.
Yeah.
It still happens.
But the point of my whole tirade was, had that person been one of us, that never would have occurred, because they would have approached the situation at the show with reverence, A, and B, had they gotten fucked up, would have had the good graces to, say, no, Mom, I had an accident. I slipped and fell. This happened, that happened. It wasn't the show. It wasn't the show. It wasn't the show. Coming up in an era where moshing was a thing on Donahue, and my parents tried to completely forbid me to go to shows because it was on TV. Geraldo and Donahue were talking about moshing at punk shows. Oh, you're not going over to that club anymore. Okay, I won't go anymore. And then I was there that night, and then I was there the next night, and
you were there summoning demons and sacrificing children.
That's what, yeah, because everybody knows how satanic hardcore punk is.
right after Geraldo went to Al Capone's vault, you were there showing him where the baby bodies are.
There it is right there, Geraldo. And he found nothing. And he found the only thing Geraldo found was a broken nose from a Nazi. That's about all he found. But I gotta ask, because there is that small generation gap between us.
Sure.
I'm like, what, 13, 14 years older than you?
Yeah, give or take.
When I was coming into hardcore punk metal, it was scary for the first maybe show or two, and then like everybody became very welcoming. Once you showed that you were showing up for the right reasons, it was the cliche. If you fell down, somebody picked you up in the pit. If you needed a ride somewhere, an older guy was going to help you out. Like, everybody became very familial. I'm sure it was that for you as well.
Not really.
No?
No. Whether it's where I grew up, whether it's, because it's LA, it's, it was the place to be at one time.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I had going for me was that I've never been largely accepted anywhere, so I never expected to be accepted in the first place.
Right.
So, like I said, I started doing street team stuff before I could even go to shows. So because I had the gumption, basically, to get myself going, to promote things, to be in contact with the right people, I get tickets. It was through the radio, real old analog days, winning tickets off the radio.
Yeah.
Which, side note, that is totally needed. I wish kids could still experience that.
Oh yeah.
But I win these tickets off the radio, and mind you, I didn't even win them directly. My friend seemed to have like the hotline to always get picked for the tickets to win. He had already won tickets for the festival and wanted to lie so that he could win more tickets. So he put my name in the hat, basically. So he gets these tickets. Unknowingly, he ends up hooking me up with a backstage pass. And he is livid. He is like, what the hell, man? I've been the direct line for you to get these tickets. There's no way you deserve this backstage pass. It's like, hey, I didn't ask you to say my name. You're the one that came up to school and just roll up on me like, oh, hey, you have these tickets. It's like, what the hell are you even talking about? I have tickets to what? Oh, the show we're going to in like 2 months. Okay, fine, whatever. It's like, just remember the chain of events correctly. I can't help it that they didn't pick your name, okay? Just back off a minute. So I'm doing this. I'm hanging out this backstage. My head's coming right off. It Sounds the Underground 2007. It was headlined, I believe, by Suicidal Tendencies. And, it's mid-2000s metalcore. So we're talking Chimera, Shadows Fall. Goat Whore was an early band that day. I mean, it was just an insane day. And if you haven't noticed the through line, I make a point to shout out all the people that have helped me along the way. Mm-hmm. So Jackie Kaiser, also known as Full Metal Jackie. She's a longtime radio host from Jersey originally.
Yep.
Heard all over the place now. I'll never forget the inroads she made for me as a young 14-year-old. For whatever reason, she interviews me and my friend, I think for like AOL Music or something. And we didn't even know that this is why we were being interviewed. There just happened to be a camera. I've only seen this footage once. I've scoured the internet and never found it again. But she like pulls me aside. She's like, "Hey, you clearly know what you're talking about. Like, how, why?" And I'm like, "Well, it may not be obvious, but like, I don't really have that many friends. So I use my time on what I care about. And I read about these obscure bands that most people just kind of turn sideways at me and are like, what the hell do you even listen to and why?"
Yeah.
So I have a lot of time in my hands and I use it. I read about that, that weird Death Doom band, and then I read about the 5 bands that their guitarist is playing in, and maybe they're all broken up, but I'm finding the rare CD next time I go digging at the record store if I can. So she's like, "How do you feel about passing out flyers for my radio show if I hook you up with tickets?" And so began the saga.
Yeah.
I think that next year and a half, I went to like 20 or 30 shows, didn't pay a cent. And the way I got to those shows was my older friends that didn't have much money but had enough money for gas and did not mind that they had a younger friend that would get them in for free would say, "Hey man, um there's a great show going on, but I need a ride. Do you mind driving if I get you in for free?" I will say this, they did have the audacity to sometimes say, "Well, what band is it?"
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're the one that's supposed to be like schooling me in this culture, like teaching me that, you go support the scene, you go to the show, you buy the shirt. Why am I having to do this for you? I'm the younger one in this situation, so why am I having to shepherd you? But all that aside, that's how I would get to shows. I would basically bribe them with the access I was gracefully given by someone that I never expected to end up connected with.
Have you ever considered, like, really telling this story in chronology, maybe accompanied by a photo or two? Because I would hasten to guess that this would make for very, a very relatable and palpable journey. Uh, Words and photographs, correlating to, your life's journey. I would read that. I would subscribe to that.
I wouldn't mind doing like a sort of like small zine where, I really want to get back to that tactile thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind hosting it online, but online just feels so simple. I want to bring it back to how random this stuff happened. I mean, like when I talk to, say, like whether it's like some family friends, they always are like, "Oh, you're like that kid in Almost Famous." It's like, well, to be fair, I didn't have the good fortune of Lester Bangs being on my speed dial.
Yeah.
That would have been a whole other story. And to be fair to that character that Cameron Crowe very wisely made so that people can have that image in their head, I'll never say that I was that cool at 14 in high school.
No. No. Because none of
That's
us
giving myself way too much credit. Not even possible.
But I think it's a story worth chronicling.
I acknowledge that for sure.
And I think it's something that's lacking now. The way people document themselves in this day and age is very immediate and very, dare I say, disposable.
Yes.
Via your TikTok, via
Truly.
and I'm not taking anything away from that, because I find it infinitely interesting as an outsider, because I'm certainly not of that.
Oh, it's not to disparage what people are doing.
No.
They're accessing the things that are of the moment, and if it appeals to them, they're accessing it. All
Yeah.
power to you.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I think it's great, but to I think to flesh out a personality and really endear yourself to a group of people who are going to accept it, you have to do something that's tactile. That's something you can touch and feel and smell and exist in a similar space with. That's why I still, when I buy a book, I buy a book.
Yeah.
When I buy music, I buy a record because I'm old as fuck, and that's how I started. That's how to me, this is not a hipster thing. This is
Oh
like
hell no.
this is sense memory, and 180-gram black vinyl sounds better than any other music delivery system, be it digital, be it CD, be it cassette, be it your great Milk's World, beautiful, rare vinyl, which I'm very much guilty of collecting as well, but they don't sound as good. That Neurosis box set that I just showed you is
Yeah,
on or 180 or 200-gram black
man.
because it sounds the best. Um, I I need that. I need that connection to the earth still. I'm afraid that for as valuable as these experiences these younger people are having online with apps and whatnot, they are important. They're real, but it's not rooted in three-dimensional space.
Oh, I've been trying desperately, and I'm gonna hold her to it. I have a 16-year-old cousin,
Mm-hmm.
and I my parents and I collectively agreed to give her a gift certificate to a local record store. I've been telling her,
Yeah.
I know it's not a priority for you, and I don't take an offense, but the day you feel like having your free time spent in a record store, I am going to go with you, and you are going to understand why I do these odd things that our family doesn't understand. We're going to have a legitimate conversation. You're going to maybe get a glimpse into why I don't quite fit the bill and disappoint a lot of our family. And it may not make sense, but you're going to at least be able to hear it from me and not just have it described to you through the lens of our weird, messed up family. You're going to actually hear it pointedly. And I mean, it is that thing of like, I'm glad that she's experiencing what she can because she needs to have her experience of being a youth.
Yeah.
But it's like, I just want to give my 2 cents if you'll allow me. I'm not over here waiting to like sneak up on you with a Joy Division shirt and try to turn you into something that you're not.
Yeah.
I'm going to just put it out there, and you can decide to take hold of it or be like, that's my weird cousin's thing. I love him, I guess, but he's into some weirdly weird stuff and seems to wear a lot of black for some reason. I don't really get it.
Something happened tonight that gave me hope for these new kids that I do want to share. I was grocery shopping. I was between, buying Beyond Burgers and going to get my wife creamer for coffee in the morning. And
For sure.
these two teenagers happened to walk past. And at the time I was wearing my Lycia t-shirt, one of my many Lycia t-shirts, because Mike and Tara from Lycia are two of my oldest and dearest friends. And this one kid is like, it's a guy and his girlfriend, and very young. The guy is very hippie in appearance, almost Dean Ween looking
All right.
in his appearance, and the lovely young girl that he was with was wearing a corset, and she was doing the whole goth thing, and I
Oh,
mean
man.
going the whole way. If I was in high school with her in the I would have been in love with her back in the day.
Of
Uh,
course.
and I'm just looking at these two and just in awe of it because it reminds me so much of my own youth. and they looked at me, and the girl just started laughing and was like, "Look at this fucking asshole," and it made me like, because like she didn't know who the fuck Lycia was, and she's a
Yeah.
goth,
Yeah.
or she thinks she's a goth, but it did my heart good because A, they were laughing at an old guy, which you're supposed to,
Hey.
and B, she's for not knowing who the fuck Lycia is, at least you're dressing the part the right way. And she was trying desperately to be in that mode.
Yeah.
And that gives me hope because they're supposed to hate me, even
Sure.
though I am just like them. And I am their spiritual father in a way. Even if I'm truly that, they're supposed to hate me for that. They're
Sure.
supposed to rail against me for that because there's nothing more punk rock than that, and that made me feel strangely good.
Yeah. I hear that.
And it's a fucked up thing to say, but I was on board for it. I was like, yeah, man, you're supposed to fucking hate me.
Oh,
I am on your team.
This is an older story, but I'll give you one along the same lines.
Okay.
So I used to live with my kung fu instructor, and I had the good fortune to kind of be not a formal, but sort of live in like help with his kids. His daughter at the time was like, I want to say maybe 7 or 8. And I lived there when his little boy was from 4 months old to 2 years old. And so, very formative years. So I had to be around them a lot.
Hmm.
And one day I'm babysitting them and I'm playing some music on my computer, and their girl was so sassy. And she just like literally struts up to me and it's like, "Are you playing that lame sad music again that you like?" And I just couldn't stop laughing. To the point that she got mad at me for laughing.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, this is a child that has been raised on like Taylor Swift,
Yeah.
music that plays on My Little Pony, whatever. And the fact that she was so pointed to just be like, "I'm sick of your crap. Stop playing that stupid sad music already. Play me the pop music that I know from the radio, damn it."
Yeah.
It's like, I could take this any variation of ways because technically I am in a position of authority over you. But this is just too funny. I'm just gonna laugh at this. Play your pop music that makes me want to stab my ears, and just have this as a memory for as long as I choose to keep it.
But you have to admire them for it. You have to almost see yourself in it because
Oh, totally.
there was a time, man. I don't even I don't even remember really what it would have. White Lion, maybe, or what? New Kids on the Block. That was my first real scourge.
Sure.
The thing that made me hate everything ever was New Kids on the Block. It was a little later in life too. I was already like becoming a teenager when they were a thing, and my they're all younger than me, all 5 of them. But
Yeah.
my sisters had this fucking obsession,
Oh, yeah.
and even in that I understood, because I don't know, not everybody's going to like what's ugly the way I did. It suited me,
Sure.
but man, I have such I don't know what it is, but I have such a deep reverence and hope for young people that I probably shouldn't have at this age. I should be a curmudgeon. I should hate them. I should hate their youth. I should covet, the fact that I used to be young, but I don't. I accept it. I kind of love it. I love being old. I love getting older. To me, it's just I was always this old in my head anyway, and
I
what?
mean, even when we were saying, about the age difference, it's like my mom would totally attest. I was born an old man.
Yeah, I was too.
So I've had the curmudgeon thing since I was like 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you factor it correct, yes, I'm in my 30s, but technically I'm in, my 120s or something.
As long as you don't get all Archie Bunker about it, you're good. But
Nah.
man, there's a world of beautiful things going on with these young people that I love them for. But we've been at it for 2 hours. I never got to like get you to plug what you're doing, what's next for you, really.
I
If you were to like just speak to my audience at large or small, or however many people listen to me at this point,
yeah.
And define to them what it is that you do and why they should engage with it, how would you do so?
So basically, against really any logic at all, pile into sometimes a very dimly lit room with almost nobody in it, and sometimes a very dimly lit, poorly funded, but at least decently run club, a few times a month at least, sometimes more often. And I do the best I can to document bands that generally have something worth hearing that not a lot of people are listening to. If that catches your interest, you can find my attempts to document that on Instagram under Soundframes Photography, or Soundframes Photo is the handle, as they call it.
Mm.
And thankfully, to a acquaintance, and I guess I would say friend, Carlos, uh, of No Echo, I occasionally post some of my ramblings, whether that's in the form of a record review, an interview, or a show review, and try to give a more focused pitch of what I've been experiencing as far as the music, both the people that I've thankfully come to know and sometimes don't know. That's that's the sales pitch, pretty much.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited about everything that you do, especially like if I could kind of appeal to my audience about what it is that attracted me to what it is that you do, it is the fact that you elevate a form. You know, as we talked about in the beginning, there's a million people who take pictures of shows, but you're doing something that a million people have done truly, but no one
Yeah.
or very few people have enough love for it to imbue their own spirit and personality onto the film and make it a fluid and organic art piece, something that has it's chronological almost. It's a different band, sure, but they're all part of this same unique and singular vision of movement and spirit and light that continues to reverberate and has not only impetus but anima. It just moves and continues to move and grow and become its own animal. That's why I keep bringing up, like, wow, it'd be great if you did this, if there were a book or just a space for you to document this, and Substack is obviously the place that's going to occur. I just hope that more people recognize what I do with this. It's important and it's real, it's honest. It's as honest as every band you listen to, as every however many fanzines are left. or podcasts or whatever. It's a true expression of joy and adulation for form, and I hope this continues.
Basically, until I can't function at a show, it'll go on. I really didn't know what to expect when, you know, all went down with my concussion. I really thought, you know, there was a bit of me like, do I really want to shoot a show again? I I was I was pretty shook at first. I won't lie. Um, I was so dispirited. I was supposed to go see Judge,
Oof.
and everything in me was like, "There's no way in hell I can go to this show. I'm on bed rest right now. I can't even remember when I left my room half the time right now, and I'm wanting to go a 4-hour bus trip to go see Judge. There's gonna be kids definitely diving over me, spin kicking the works." And you know, I had enough sense that I didn't go. Um, I I did shoot a show the very day my bed rest ended, but mind you, it was a psychedelia band that was really chill.
Yeah.
I eased myself back into the pool.
Yeah, you don't have Mike Judge, Porcel, and like, you know, the core members of the youth crew in their advanced age still fucking making it happen. Which incidentally, Judge on that tour were fucking crazy good, but you know, you did the right thing, god damn it.
Oh, I would be lying if I, you know, would I have wanted to see what those photos could have been?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Would I have probably regretted every minute of being at that show? If I remembered them, yeah, but I probably wouldn't have remembered it. I mean, I still argue every time when I have to tell about my concussion. It's like, hey, at least I got great photos from it. Check these out. And people
Yeah,
are always like, you're such a dick. It's like, hey, I was there to shoot a show.
yeah.
Did I come out with a bump from it? Yes. But do I have great photos to remember it? Yes.
Fuck
So
yeah.
therefore, I win. Your argument loses. Next question.
All right, my friend, I'm gonna wrap for the evening, but listen, we got to do this again. This is fun.
Oh,
This is
I
great.
I am not surprised that this went 2 hours
Yeah, I'm not
at
either.
all.
I figured it was going to go 3, but you know, I've been up since 4 in the morning, and
Oh, dude, you got to get some rest in.
for sure.
I,
But I loved this. I can't wait to do it again. So next couple months, let's do it again.
hit me up.
Make it a
I,
thing.
you know how to get a hold of me.
Absolutely. Well,
I,
we talk. So you're never that
as
far.
as much as I cower as you were saying the kind things that you did about my work, I genuinely appreciate it. I'll just this quick short story. When I
Yeah,
was doing that photo residency I mentioned earlier,
yeah,
it was the very last night we were going to be in Germany, and my instructor comes over to me. And mind you, I have all the respect in this world for this man because he headed up the thing, but him and I never saw eye to eye. We just couldn't.
yeah.
He was much more a studio oriented photographer, was all about controlling the environment, was very old school, only ever shot film, and I respect it absolutely. But you know, he'd see my work, especially at shows, and just right over his head. But he came up to me, and I had done this photo series that wasn't of bands for once. I did more of a landscape thing. I could share some of the photos with you sometime. It's basically what I called this like walk of grief. I was in Paris a year after the Bataclan attack,
Oh, yeah.
and so I felt this responsibility because I met I believe it was a TM or someone that was working for Eagles of Death Metal at the time. I had met him years before when he I think toured with Machine Head, And I only knew because I remembered his face when I saw the news clip flash that he was one of the victims in that terrorist attack. So I scouted out all the places that were affected in that attack, and I took these photos of different memorials and the outsides of the buildings. And it was this walk of grief, this sort of pilgrimage of sorts that I took to kind of experience the essence of that neighborhood a year later. And I mean, I was just a visitor that was there for a week. You saw that there was a lot going on in people that lived there. I had this very odd moment of speaking very broken French to a gardener at the park across the street from the Bataclan. And he asked me if I knew anybody. I pointed at the name of the guy that I admittedly had only met once when I was a teenager. And there was clearly some other tourists. And we all kind of shared this very odd but really beautiful moment of grief together, where we all just kind of stood silently in the park looking at all these flowers that are still being brought a year later, all these notes, all these candles. And I sat a block down at a bar to finish the night, and it was the one place that only the terrorists had been killed. No casualties that were innocent were there. And I looked up, and the one nameplate that they usually had that would list victims, it was blank. And I was later told it's blank because the only people that died here were terrorists.
God.
And so I've presented these photos, and it's this heavy thing. I'm not expecting anybody to like just come up to me real easy talking about it. But of course, who does? My photo instructor.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, I'm really glad you went, because even if I don't understand your work, I can honestly say this: you always surprise me.
Yeah.
And the fact that's the only compliment I ever received from that man in like the 4 years I had contact with him is so satisfying and hilarious all at the same time.
And that's that thing, that transcendence of generation that I was alluding to there. You don't have to truly understand the situation, the nuance, but that reaching not across the aisle but up to that next, that last plateau, it should be actually, because they're the ones before us, and bridging that gap and having that moment of recognition, it's worth everything.
Yeah. So that was my long way around the tree of saying I'm not used to the compliments. And so if I'm like shriveling in a ball over here, I'm just not accustomed to it. But I'm very grateful for it.
But I am first and foremost, as I've said a million times, I don't have people on here who I'm not a fan of. So I am your fan, and that's why you're here. So
it's mutual.
I appreciate you for coming on. I'm beholden to you for it. I hope we can do it again soon.
Like I said, say the word, we'll set it up.
All right, my friend. You have a great night, and I'll hit you up when this is ready to go, so you can prepare yourself for the onslaught of love.
Oh boy. Get some rest, man.
All right, my brother.
Enjoy some time with your son this weekend.
I sure will.
Make sure to just hunker down when you can.
I try to.
Those moments come too few and far between. Like I said, I've worked with kids before. I literally lived with kids before and took care of them. Those times are way too valuable.
That they are.
All right, take care, man.